PodcastCoug Season 4, Episode 8.
You're listening to the PodcastCoug Radio Network with your host, James Laurie. The PodcastCoug is your weekly Coug on Demand show featuring all things Cougs and Washington State Cougar football. And now, here is your host, PodcastCoug.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the PodcastCoug. I am James Laurie, the PodcastCoug, and you are listening to the PodcastCoug. We're all things Cougar football. 30 minutes of Coug talk. We're talking about Colorado, our improved defense, maxing it out with Borghi, and our upcoming game against the Mighty Ducks in Eugene, Autzen Stadium, Saturday night. Hey, welcome back to the PodcastCoug. Cougs are 4-3, 1-3 in conference. Cougs boat race Colorado last Saturday, 41-10. 41-10 win over Colorado gave the Cougs their first Pac-12 victory. The defense had its best performance of the season. I'm going to repeat that, and it's great to hear. Cougs had the best performance of the season, right? So tackling was solid, pass rush was even better, right? And the pass coverage from the defensive secondary was something that finally resembled pass coverage. I mean, it was good, right? Colorado only physically played, if you think about it, the Buffaloes have physically only been to Pullman 4 times in 100 years, right? Remember, now, do you guys remember 2001, 9/11? I remember it so well. Back in the day, 18 years ago, Washington State just didn't bring in marquee non-con games, okay? That typically it's cupcake, right? It's non-con cupcakes. For forever. And when we had scheduled the University of Colorado in 2001 to come to Pullman, I'll never forget this because my wife and I were actually in Manhattan during the 9/11. We were there. I watched the towers go down in mid-Manhattan. And the next following Saturday, the Colorado Buffaloes were coming to, it was September 11th. Well, it was that September week. And Colorado was coming to Pullman, and they had to cancel the game. It was crazy. It was either the Saturday before or after 9/11. And I was so excited that a major team is coming to Pullman. They canceled and rescheduled years ahead. So here we are. Colorado has only been to Pullman 4 times. They struggled big time on Saturday, and we haven't seen a Pac-12 team perform like that in a lot of years. I mean, even the Oregon States, I can't remember the last time we saw somebody just struggle so much, right? Remember, that Colorado has won some games. I mean, they beat Arizona, right? I mean, Nebraska and Colorado State, right? But the worst weather going into that football game, maybe not like Portland State, but really bad. That rain was coming straight down. No wind, cold enough though, but not enough for snow, but just super wet, right? Just getting hammered by the rain. And of course, the student section, they bolted, they cleared out, and just soaking all night long. And, and I was over at Husky Stadium. I mean, tailgating before was just hammered with rain during the game, no rain. And then after the game, it was rain, but that was in Seattle, but in Pullman, just bucketing, and it was windy, straight coming down. Gordon really played well considering how wet the ball was, throwing in those conditions. He played really, really well. And so anyway, how about Skylar Thomas? Great stuff. And Max Borghi, just super talent, just casually handled the ball, and there he is. So what? He ended up with 10 catches, and he continues to be our star. And how about Brandon? Brandon, of course, really cool to see McIntosh continue to show some bright spots as he gets some touches throughout the game. And again, welcome back, Brandon. Arconado truly has been missing the missing link, the missing piece on our offense for the past 3 games prior to Colorado. It seems like every time Arco's in, we win, and he just produces, right? I mean, way to go, Arco. So as we know, the defensive backfield has been under some, under some spotlight, lots of criticism with the personnel changes, a lot of adjustments both on the field, in the press box, player engagement. We know that. We know all the story. They only gave up 140 yards passing, ended up with 3 interceptions, and these guys, as a defensive unit, deserve the game ball because they had the biggest improvement, somewhat dominated the game that really led to that Washington State walking out with such a blowout victory. So a lot of positive signs in the rain, in Pullman, homecoming, right? So you take, literally you take the back half of Arizona State game out of it, which is really where the defense let up a little bit and didn't finish the game. And you're almost there, right? So this defense is improving. Now we're facing a real test offensively. Of course, Oregon coming up Saturday, and the Ducks, they've shown their consistencies with their offense too. And we're going to talk about Oregon in the second half of the podcast, Coug. But think about this. We really don't have a marquee win this year. I mean, think about it. Who have we played, right? Who have we beaten? Okay, we beat New Mexico State, right? What is their record? 0-7. Northern Colorado, they're 1-7. The Houston Cougs, University of Houston, they're 3-5, and Colorado is 3-4. And so let's not get too carried away here. Let's not get out of hand. If we beat Oregon, that's a whole nother story, right? That's another headline. That's 5 in a row. Colorado was simply not explosive. They missed a field goal, and all of a sudden it's a blowout, right? It really was nice to see that kind of energy because not only did they breathe new life into their defense, the Cougs, but but as an offense, you look around and say, where are we headed? Let's keep our eyes rolling. Where are we going? Again, Borghi had 12 carries and over 100 yards. He obviously had a great run at 47, and I wish we could have given the ball more. Borghi is a deal killer. I mean, he's just a deal killer, right? So you look at the defensive unit, and I think we have a renewed energy, which is vital for our defense. We just needed that, right? And then you've got new leaders in the coaches, and it's almost segmented into each of the position that the group says, hey, this is the person we're following into battle. So let's discover who that is. That's Jihad Woods. Let's call him a captain. He may not be the local leader on the team, but Jihad produces day in and day out. Jihad needs to continue to show up and produce. And when you look in the defense and say, we needed that continuous energy, go make every play. We needed that top tier talent guy to show up every week. And Jihad says, all right, everybody, hey guys, let's get into the right place. Let's do the right things. Just follow my lead. And when it comes to making plays this weekend and week out, Jihad continues to perform and raise the game. So we got to get Jihad to continue to lead this defensive team and just go for it, right? We're going in the right direction. Go forward. If we can maintain the energy, start to win those plays that we hadn't won in the past couple of weeks, those turnovers, the pressures, some of that pressures, the tips and the energy plays. I mean, if we do that, our offense is going to continue to produce, right? So it's going to be a huge challenge on Saturday against the Ducks. Our defense needs to find a way, find their identity, right? And it's never too late. It's half season's over. We've got the half season left, but it's never too late. You can find your identity now, and you'll be headed in the right direction. And we're just going to continue to rack up the win column. None of this, we need to be 6-6 to go get that ribbon, that trophy cup. We have that potential for a 7-5 season, right? So, hey, did you see that HBO documentary on HBO Now at 24/7? It's called. Of course, if you and I wasn't either. If you're don't have HBO Now, you can sign up for a free 1 week, no obligation. You can cancel if you want. 10 highlights. The ASU segment I thought was extremely well done. Just absolutely amazing what they did for Arizona State on a 1 hour. Then Washington State was released on Wednesday. 10 highlights from Washington State's appearance on the HBO 24/7 just to highlight real quick, it was all about Leach. Leach was really about Leach, but what's surprising is Leach using the F-bombs. So if you've got, children around, or if you've got teenagers or just children, you may not want to have that HBO on when the children are around, because, So also, number 2, they talked about the defensive turbulence against Clay's resignation, all that, and the new coaches, and then touring the apartment with Gordon and Borghi, their apartment in Plasden, and then all profiling Anthony Gordon, and then our talented receivers, and then Glenn Johnson, the mayor, 5th consecutive term. They didn't even mention that he was my broadcast professor, or he was our professor at Edward R. Murrow Communication School. But good going, Glenn, on his 5th consecutive term, and he's going to do it forever, right? So movie night, Friday nights at movie night, at home games Friday night before a home game. Blake Mazza, they kind of profiled him a little bit, kicker, and then bowling at Zeppo's, and then they wrapped it up with our win against Colorado, and that was it. I think they did a fairly good job. Personally, I felt that the Arizona State segment was better. I think well done. Herm Edwards, I think, just did a marvelous job there. Both facilities are great. The campus looked great. And they did a great job showing the Palouse and the walk with Leach and everything. So it was a good job. You have an opportunity to just pick it up, 1 week free if you want. And it's easy. So, okay, 4 straight. Can we make it 5 in a row? We're talking about the Cougs against the Mighty Ducks. Are they going to be mighty this weekend? We're going to see who shows up, right? Maybe there might be a letdown after the Dogs from Saturday, right? Frankly, they've looked like, Oregon looks like they've clinched the North already, right? They're knocking at the door. It's crazy what they've done. They continue to cruise right along, and we've got a great series, 4 in a row, including last year that 34-20 over the Ducks on game day, and the last 2 times in Eugene's, and the Cougs, had a 48-38 and then a 33-10. The last 2 meetings there in Eugene. So can we make it 5 in a row? We're going to find out. We're going to talk more about this, and the Ducks, the first place Ducks, we're going to talk about that in the second half of the Podcast Coug, coming up right next, right here on the Podcast Coug.
Hey, Coug fans, you're podcasting with James Laurie and the Podcast Coug Radio Network. The Podcast Coug is your weekly Coug on Demand show, featuring all things Cougar football in Washington State. To help you get through the week, hit the subscribe button or check us out on iTunes, the App Store, iOS, Google Play, Stitcher, or at podcastcoug.com.
Welcome back to the second half of the Podcast Coug. I am James Laurie, the Podcast Coug, where all things are Cougar football, all things Cougs. Again, 4 straight over the Ducks. Our first one back in 2015 with a great overtime win, 45-38 in Eugene, and then 2016. 51-33, and in Pullman it was that was actually 2016 was 51-33 in Pullman, and then 2017 33-10 a couple of years ago in Eugene, and last year, of course, game day 34-20, right? And so I like that. 51-33 in Pullman 2016. Boy, memories fade. 51 points against the Ducks. We'll take it any day. Of course, last year, the game day, that was so huge. Boy, that was great. Arriving at game day at 4:30 in the morning, it was amazing. All right. Dark. And the cameras were rolling. It was crazy. So I always kind of thought that that Washington State just had, we've always had the better team these past 4 years. I mean, we really have. And I mean, not, there isn't anybody on the Oregon Duck roster that has beat Washington State. If you think about it, no player on the Oregon Duck roster has beat Washington State. The largest margin of victory, I was there. Remember it big time. Autzen Stadium. 55-16. That was crazy. That was 2003. Never forget it. Duck fans cleared out at halftime. Just the house was empty. Only left in the stadium were Coug fans during the fourth quarter. What a game. And plus the Ducks were on the cover of Sports Illustrated, what I called the SI Jinx, right? Heading into the game. And it was surreal. Cougs show up 55-16 after the Ducks were on the cover of Sports Illustrated just a few days earlier. It was just absolutely amazing. The most unforgettable 55-16 win. That was 2003, and I'm not sure we can truly say what's going on this year, because Oregon does have some players, right? They're going to make some plays. Like I said, Oregon has a Washington State problem, and we've got a UW problem, and we've been saying that for years, right? So we can get the Ducks while their guard is down after their win over the UW, right? And I was at that game. I watched the game last Saturday at Husky Stadium. More on that in a few minutes. So Max Borghi had 12 carries, 106 yards, 9 catches, 57. And a big day for Borghi, last Saturday against Colorado. But, don't you agree that Max needs about 20 carries, maybe 25, not 12, right? If we're going to take on the Ducks, we just need to step up. We need to max it up, right? And we just have to be able to hand it off to Borghi more. And he's our skill set guy, right? Some little dump passes, little swings. Those are great, but it's not taking him for what he's best at, his core competency. He's a SME, right? He's a subject matter expert at running the ball, and we're not maximizing his gifts, his natural talents and gifts. Borghi needs a game that he's going to give him a chance for that 30 or 40-yard breakout, right? And because it's been proven that he's got the quickest feet in the West, and he's hard to bring down. So you got to continue to allow that skill set, just to wait for it to explode. You got to give him some carries and more carries and more carries, and watch and wait for that breakthrough. Let him explode. I think 20 carries to the max. And maybe 5 or 8 receptions would be good, right? Because Gordon is doing such a great job avoiding pressure and just getting the ball out. Quick release. I mean, come on. Gordon is the best. He is the best quarterback. I'm telling you, the guy is, I just love him. I just think he is phenomenal, right? So, and he throws a nice ball in the rain, right? So, I think we got a good combo here. Gordon's proven to be the real deal, the full package. And from a runner's perspective, and back to Borghi, if he can get in the game and say, hey, I know I'm the guy. I'm going to get the big play. You can depend on me. I'm one of the guys that are going to make the plays, and then it's Max and Arco, right? Max and Arco. Why not? Arconado and Max. And I think that's a great combination. Arco works so great with Gordon. Their history. They played junior college together. So how many carries and receptions should Max get? I think if you go over 20 carries and 8 receptions, you're probably in the right spot, right? And I think we're gonna hold up because he's physical and he's gotten stronger off season. I just think it's going to happen at 20 carries. over 8 receptions. Max is going to make a ton of plays for you, and he's going to get some first downs, of course. And yeah, Oregon's very, their defenses, they're very talented on defense. They've got a lot of guys that can make the plays, and they're going to have a plan. For the air raid, the thing that gets unaccounted for is the running back. Think about it. Our opponents have plans. Look at Kyle Whittingham. Look at Utah, right? And so it's where Washington State could have an advantage. It's our running game. Nobody factors that in when they plan against us to play. Nobody does. Look, like Utah, their game plan was going to run the ball down our throats and then play action and keep our offense off the field. But look at over the last couple of years at Washington State, probably as a whole was better than Oregon. A lot more experience on both sides of the ball. We had better players in Oregon, but not so much this year. Oregon's defense is the real deal, and they got a little bit exposed against Montlake. The Huskies. I think in general their speed on their back end and their athleticism, along with some of the upgrades they have, and their front four is going to allow them to rush the passer without really having to blitz and a lot in man coverage. So it's going to be a challenge for Washington State. I mean, those guys are really talented as anybody on the West Coast. And I was, like I said, I was at the Oregon Husky game last Saturday, rooting for the Ducks. Inside, in my heart, I was rooting for the the Ducks. On the outside, I was wearing a Husky headband. Why? Showing respect to my host, my friend, my client. I'm in real estate. I was invited, and I was tailgating. I was surrounded, of course, by all Husky guys, and I had a headband on. Where did I get a Washington Huskies headband? Well, I went to the Mercer Island thrift store and bought one I bought a snow cap, one of these where you wear a cap like a ski cap with a little ball on the top, the little, ball that flows through, kind of flutters around. And it was definitely on the female side, and it had Washington on the front. Well, I'm not going to wear a ski hat and look like a female. It was raining, but it's not 30 degrees, right? So I just said, and that was all they had at the thrift store, and it was $2. And I didn't want to go pay $25 for a hat. I'm going to Goodwill, right, for my Husky hat. So I take this little snow hat with this little dongle at the top, and I cut off everything, but the head, like the headband, and it worked out well. I took my scissors and I created a headband that said W, or I think it was W, or Huskies or Washington on the front. $2. And I'm good, and I'm honoring and respecting my client, my friend, these guys that invited me. But in the inside, it's where the inside counts. It's your heart. I'm rooting for Oregon, and sure enough, Oregon won, and that was a lot of fun. Totally, we got drenched. I mean, before the game and after the game, it was just bucketing rain. During the game, it was dry. So back to Oregon, you look at their offense, and you've got some challenges. That they've got one of the most popular, talked about quarterbacks in the country, and frankly, I think it's a lot of hype, right? Justin Herbert leans heavily on the running game, which that it's a challenge for Washington State because Oregon's offense is really good, and they want to run the ball and use some play action passes, and there's a chance they can be really effective. But one of the things that pop out are in Washington State's favor is Oregon's receivers are not really that good. They're not as good as Washington State's. It's clearly that's their weakness, is their receivers. And we've got the receivers, right? So probably the weakest part is Oregon's receivers. And to some advantage, on computer, Oregon is a better team. But by far, I'd rather have Gordon any day over Justin Herbert any day. And so does Leach, by the way. Leach agrees as well. I think Washington State can score with anybody, and I do think that we get a couple of stops. The reality is that Washington State's defense is going to need to step up step up big time with some turnovers, make some big plays. And, in the past 4 years, Washington State has been the better team. And we've been recruiting better every class, every year. And so these guys are no different. They're the top of their recruiting class. They went to Oregon because they want get all the free shoes. And back in the days, it was getting the flat panels on the walls, but that's over with. And they get away with playing soft, right? So they've always had the talent. Washington State's just had their number, and yes, they're off to a great start, and a lot of questions that remain, even their defense, because their defense is a bunch of studs. I mean, they're good, but sure, when you look good, you look at who you've played against, and they haven't really been matched up against. Their defense perspective, it's been good, but really, who have they played as well? That first game, that opening game in Auburn, that was a big game, but they've been. They've got an advantage from a statistical standpoint. They look good on computer, and I'd like to point out that Washington State's air raid attack is really going to spread them out and really eliminate one of their strengths. And Herbert obviously is a top draft pick. He's got the popular vote. Don't know why. Really? I mean, however, he's really hasn't made a huge statement, and he's yet to prove his potential. What has Justin Herbert done to prove by being a top draft pick, except for his name, and it's his 5th year? What has he done? He's been around for 5 years. Anthony Gordon has been around for 1 year, technically. I mean, he's really been with us for more than that, but he's been playing as a Coug for 1 year. Can you believe it? How dangerous would Anthony Gordon be in the draft if he was with us for 4 years? So frankly, Justin Herbert is performing efficiently, but he's not dominating. He's just not dominating, right? So you look at Herbert's stats against Gordon's. Gordon has a different offense, a different style, 1,000 more yards than Herbert, and 10 more touchdowns, right? 1,000 more yards than Herbert. And 10 more touchdowns. So it just speaks to the team, really. They've got a lot of talent, and when things are going well, they can fly. And, as you go against a team that's finding a new identity, one of those is sneaking a game where I see the Cougs showing up and having some swag about them. Why not, right? You know these guys. You haven't changed much. They haven't changed much from the last year. You beat them handedly last year on game day. I think the game day energy last year was something that nobody was going to overcome, right? And, so you look at those two teams and you match up and you say, yeah, I'm just not buying into it. Honestly, I don't buy into the preseason. They've won 6 games in a row. So what? They didn't look that explosive to me at Husky Stadium last week. They just didn't look explosive. And their quarterback doesn't look, frankly, Gordon's the guy, right? UW put up 30 points, 30 on them. So the defense isn't a steel curtain, right? So, but if you let the Oregon Ducks run on you and get the momentum, and their big name quarterback can throw the ball downfield, sure. But we go into Autzen, and there's got to be that swag and that confidence saying that the Ducks have not beat us in a long time for a reason. Let's go prove that reason again, right? So that's simple as that, right? Now remember, Oregon has hired away 3 of Mike Leach's position coaches in the past 3 years. The former Ducks, coach Willie Taggart brought in our defensive line coach Joe Salve, and he's on board as their offensive line, and he did that in 2017. Running backs coach Jim Mastro left to become Mario Cristobal's run coach coordinator in 2018. And then, of course, inside linebackers coach Ken Wilson left this last offseason to work for the Ducks against their linebackers. So, Leach is a training ground and a headhunter for other teams, especially Oregon, and they still can't beat us, right? So here you go, right? So again, going to Autzen, there's got to be a swag and a confidence saying that Ducks have not beat us in a long time for a reason. Let's go prove that reason again, right? Let's do it. Hey, if you like what you're hearing on the Podcast Coug, be sure to subscribe, hit that favorite button. Really appreciate it. That's it for episode 8 of the 4th season of the Podcast Coug. Let's take the Ducks, get that victory. We'll see you next week, and go Cougs.
You've been listening to the Podcast Coug Radio Network with your host, James Laurie. The Podcast Coug is your weekly Coug on Demand show featuring all things Cougs and Washington State Cougar football. This has been a presentation of the Podcast Coug Radio Network. Find us at PodcastCoug.com.